So we're going to get started. I'm going to start off with a little kind of example of how Wired works. 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago, Wired came on the scene as this kind of burst of fresh air from a distant planet. It was a postcard from the future, was the way they talked about it, because it was really giving hints of a world that wasn't yet apparent, maybe in California, but not in the rest of the world. It was really this kind of idea that Wired had a sense of what the future would be, and that was kind of an appealing prospect. We've had our misses. We did do a big feature on the hydrogen economy that was going to revolutionize everything and hasn't quite yet. We did a big thing on the QCat, if you remember the QCat. I don't know if anybody does. We did a big Smell-O-Vision cover in 1999. That was before my time, before Chris's time. But more or less, we've had pretty good accuracy. And so I want to give you a sense of how we do things and how we basically spot the future. We thought we'd put together for our 20th anniversary and for the purposes of this day a list of rules. So I'm just going to rifle through them. Our first rule that we use is we look for cross-pollinators. Now this, of course, is not an insight that is only ours, exclusive to Wired. Cross-pollination has been a long time fertile way to kind of create and foment change. The dawn of the computer age was this amazing cocktail of people, physicists, mathematicians, social scientists who came together in Princeton in the 40s and 50s. There was John von Neumann, there was Norbert Wiener, there was Margaret Mead. I mean, imagine a cocktail party between Margaret Mead and John von Neumann. But that was happening, and that's really what kind of paved the way for the computer age. Now, this moment is this great age, this great moment, this fertile period of cross-pollination. You've got biology and computers. You've got liberal arts and computers. You'll hear later today about the convergence of Detroit and Silicon Valley. These are these kind of connections where people are finding insights in one world and bringing them to another one and bringing those cross-pollination, bringing that fertilization together, and that's where the future happens. Another one, the second one that we want to talk about is surfing the exponentials. Now, surfing the exponentials, this is a phrase I pick up from a biologist called Drew Endy. And what he's talking about here is there are all these waves of exponential progress, right? There's Moore's law, which everybody knows about, this kind of steady increase of computer power. Well, some people somewhere in some lab are doing the hard work that's creating better chips year after year after year. The rest of us just get to enjoy the ride, right? The rest of us just kind of ride along on top of the exponential. And what happens is you can start not only kind of banking on today's technology, but you can start betting on tomorrow's technology. So there are all these exponential patterns at work. There's computing power, as I mentioned, but there's also bandwidth, which is increasing exponentially and decreasing in price. You've got sensors. You've got even battery storage is increasing, is getting better, faster, cheaper. All of these things are kind of the basis, the kind of building block for all this progress. And what real innovators do is they spot not just where the technology is, but where it's going. And by anticipating where it's going, you can kind of surf along and ride along and get to the future a little bit ahead of everyone else. The third one that we use is favoring the liberators. So what we look for in favoring the liberators, it's a fancy word for basically something out of microeconomics 101. You've all heard of artificial scarcity, right? Artificial scarcity is the economic phenomenon when somebody or a company that has a kind of commodity that they can kind of control, they limit access to it, they limit resource, how many people can get at it, they charge exorbitantly for it. And that works great. That's a great business model until something like the MP3 comes along or until BitTorrent comes along and destroys that business model. So we actually, in the Wired world, we want to be able to spot those kind of innovators that are creating the MP3s, creating the BitTorrents, and really kind of exploiting things and letting them loose, freeing up these kind of blockages and loosening and liberating energy. Now, Reid Hoffman one of the founders of LinkedIn, he has he takes it a further way. He talks about liquidity, bringing liquidity to markets. He's not talking about capital liquidity. He's talking about commodity liquidity. He's talking about bringing extra kind of things in online, such as the way Airbnb has turned second bedrooms into hotel rooms, the way Uber, for instance, has turned idling car service drivers into on-call chauffeurs. This is bringing liquidity to markets, and it's an incredibly powerful catalyst of the future. The fourth thing we look for is audacity. Now, this, of course, some of you may know why we have a light bulb coated in hair. It's big, hairy, audacious goals, right? This is a phrase from Built to Last, which is a 1994 management book. It did very well, but audacity in and of itself isn't the way to the future. What you really need is to kind of be shooting for something that is way beyond the feasible in the kind of current moment. So you need one of these mission statements like, I don't know, organizing the world's information, right? That's insane, right? That's an insane notion that you could actually organize the world's information. But that's what Google set out to do, and lo and behold, they've gotten some way towards there, but they've accomplished a lot of amazing things along the way. And that's actually one of Larry Page's mantras, is that by having people set out really ambitious goals, audacious goals, what you end up doing is solving a lot of smaller things along the way. In fact, you end up solving a lot more things and creating a lot more innovation than you would if you set realistic goals at the outset. So audacity is something we look for. You know, in this age of too many parking apps, too many restaurant apps, too many video game apps, it's good to look for the Teslas. It's good to look for the Squares, those companies that want to change the way we drive, the companies that want to change the way we use money. Those are audacious statements, and that's where the future happens. The fifth goal is banking on openness. And for this one, I'll go back 20 years to 1993, when Linux was just a kind of gleam in Linus Torvalds' eye, barely released. And it was a kind of hobby for a certain type of altruistic programmer. And that was great in 1993. Flash forward to 2003, and Linux was actually the backbone of two of the biggest IPOs of the dot-com era. It was something that if you wanted to make Steve Ballmer or Bill Gates apoplectic and go a little bit crazy, you would mention Linux, and they would tell you Steve Ballmer at the time compared it to a cancer. It was also, though, openness was also this idea that was stretching beyond software and reaching other industries, other ways of thinking. It was a very powerful idea. Flash forward to today, 20 years later, and believe it or not, Microsoft is one of the biggest contributors to Linux on the planet. They're number 20 now in terms of the contributions to Linux. They're on board with open source. Open source is actually part of the fabric of the web. Most websites are built on some ways with open source software. And you have openness as a philosophy that has gone way beyond software. Something like Twitter took a kind of texting tool and gave it out to the users, just said, what would you do with this? And the user community is what created hashtags, they created retweets, they created the whole ecosystem that has made Twitter a viable media platform. That's what openness does. What openness does is it exploits your opportunity. It gives your good idea its maximum opportunity to reach the maximum amount of people. And that's what you want to do. You only have a small window of opportunity for any given idea. And when an innovation has openness behind it, that's when we know that there's something there, that has its maximum opportunity to reach its greatest value. Number 6 is demanding deep design. And you can't really talk about design without talking about Apple, right? So I'm going to talk about Apple, but I'm not going to praise the single button. I'm not going to praise the brilliance of Johnny Ive. I'm going to instead talk about Apple's way with user manuals. Okay? They're really good at user manuals. I don't know if you've noticed this, but they only have user manuals that are a page or two long. They're really short. They're terse. They're the minimum amount of information that you need to know. And that's what deep design is all about. Deep design is helping strip away the kind of cacophony of information, the too much information, this barrage of information that we have every day, that we're confronting every moment of our lives. That's what we need now. And the companies that are creating deep design, that are deeply embedding curative properties and helping us organize our lives, helping us understand information, that's where the future lies. So Facebook has actually been really good about this. So they've managed to do almost a dozen redesigns in their 8 years of existence. And every redesign is a little bit better at cajoling the users to share more and more, to share more photos, to share more friends, to share more information about their habits and what they like, what they don't like. And the reason that they're sharing more is because it's better organized. They're able to organize it and bring some order to their lives. It's the same thing that Pinterest does, right? It's the same reason why Pinterest is so hot right now. I mean, it's amazing how many people are using Pinterest, because it turns the messy lives we live into something that actually looks beautiful, right? And that's what deep design does. Deep design turns chaos into curation. It's actually one of the most hardest and most elusive and most easily overlooked things on this list. Deep design is incredibly powerful when it's built into the bones of a product. The last one that we went to was spending time with time wasters. Now, time wasting is it's actually kind of the opposite of something that we had on this list and then clicked off. I was talking with my predecessor as executive editor, Kevin Kelly, the founding executive editor of Wired, about this list, and we were talking about the ideas. And we were talking about this kind of idea that a good way to start a business is to look for an inefficiency, right? So if you can bring an efficiency to a market where there was inefficiency, that's a good foundation for a business. And we agreed on that, but Kevin pointed out that that's not necessarily the way to the future. That may be a good way to start a business. It might be a business plan, but it's not the kind of thing that's going to change the world. Instead, he suggested that you look for people who are being inefficient, who are deliberately, kind of productively, eagerly, enthusiastically wasting their time. They want nothing to do more than to spend their idle hours that they probably don't have, but they want to waste it. They want to be doing something that they shouldn't probably be doing, and you know, messing around, creating new tools, creating new language, creating new culture. And when people do that, when people are choosing to do something, you're getting the excitement and the kind of power that's laying the groundwork for new companies and new organizations. So some examples of that are the DIY bio movement right now, the maker movement, of course. The quantified self group is an example of this, people wasting their time just tracking everything, obsessing about everything about their bodies. Hackathons in general are this amazing example of organized time wasting. And what happens when you get people doing that? What happens is that you start to get people involved in something that they're going to create even more than they started with. Time wasting, turns out, is a really productive way to spend time. So that's the list. The reason why Wired is giving these up now, the reason why we've decided to divulge this list of how we kind of spot the future is not that we want to go out of business, right? It's not that we kind of decided we're going to close up shop and we're going to kind of turn over the secret sauce that we have. The truth is these aren't secrets at all. These are implicit in all of the innovations that we write about. They're implicit in all the stuff you're going to hear about today. We thought, though, that by making them explicit, by putting them out to you, by putting them in the magazine this month, we might do a small part, our small part, in helping foment some of the changes and innovations that we'll be able to write about for the next 20 years. So thank you very much.